Hi and welcome to Jared's Academy. Today's lesson is about adding and subtracting rational expressions. Before we do any examples, I want you to understand that there are certain steps that we must follow in order to simplify. The very first step is factoring. So once we factor, then we follow through the next step, which is getting your lowest common denominator. Because we're dealing with adding and subtracting rational expressions, we need to have the same denominator in order to simplify the numerator. Third step, before at the end you simplify, you have to go through stating the restrictions for the variable in the bottom of a rational expression. Then you can simplify the rational expressions. And here are some examples that we can go through and understand better what we just talked about. So here's example number one. We have 5 over 4x squared plus 1 over 7x cubed. So since these are monomials, so we don't need to really apply factoring. But we do have to go through the second step, finding our lowest common denominator. And it's the same concept where we learned in lower grades when we were adding and subtracting fractions. Because if you were to add, subtract fractions, you must have the same denominator. So look at the coefficients first, 4 and 7. And the lowest common denominator for both will be 28, because 4 and 7 will go into 28. Now the variables x squared and x cubed. So the lowest would be x to the power of 3, because x squared goes into x to the power of 3 and x cubed also goes into x to the power of 3. So that is your lowest common denominator. Once you set this, then you should be able to find your numerators in order to simplify. So what happened from here to there, from 4x to the 2 to 28x cubed? So what happened here, we multiplied this by 7x. So we multiplied the top one also by 7x. So whatever you multiplied the bottom, you multiplied the top one also. So 5 times 7x would be 35x. Now we go here. What happened from here to here? So what did we multiply here? We only multiplied by 4, because 4 times 7x cubed is 28x cubed. So we multiply also the top by 4. So 1 times 4 would be 4. Now since we have the same denominator, we should be able to add the numerator, and the denominator still stays the same. So we have 35x plus 4, and this is in simplest form, so we did not really or we cannot go further to simplify, because if there's nothing to factor and there's nothing to get rid of from top to bottom. But still, before we simplify, in some cases there are possibilities, maybe you can simplify further, but before you do that, you always state your restrictions. So restrictions is for the variable in the bottom. So since it's monomial in the bottom, we said x cannot be 0 automatically, because that's the only value that makes the bottom equal to 0. But we leave this as is right here, because that is in simplest form. There's nothing else we can do further. So that's that. And let's do another example right here, where we have a monomial over trinomial plus mono over binomial to the power of 2. So again, now here we have to factor. That's the very first step, to factor. So we leave the numerator as this. So we apply simple trinomial factoring. It'd be x plus 3 and x minus 2 plus. This is already in factored form, so meaning that we have 2 of those. Now, what is your lowest common denominator? So before we simplify, let's state the restrictions just in case we forget. The restrictions are, we say for the bottom, is the zeros of the bottom, the zeros of each of these expressions. So the 0 of x plus 3 is -3, because if I were to substitute for x -3, the bottom will equal to 0. So x cannot be -3. And how about here? X cannot be 2, because 2 minus 2 is 0. So x cannot be 2. What about here? -3. But since we already stated, we don't have to repeat it again. Now we should be able to find our lowest common denominator. Now for both terms, Your lowest common denominator would be, let's start with x plus 3. X plus 3, and we have also here x plus 3 to the power of 2. So your lowest common denominator would be x plus 3 to the power of 2. And both carries the same denominator. Now, how about x minus 2? So both has to be carrying also x minus 2. Now that is your lowest common denominator. Now to find the numerator, we just examine the bottom of this to this. So what happened from here to there? What did we do here to get this? We multiplied this by x plus 3 because we're missing 1x plus 3 here in order to, if you wanted to match the bottom of this to this. So then you have to, since you multiplied this by x plus 3, you multiply the top one also by x plus 3. So what about here? What are we missing? What happened from here to there? You multiplied this by x minus 2. So you multiply the top one also by x minus 2. Now, you set to simplify the numerator. So all we got to do, expand the brackets and combine like terms. And the bottom of both of these expressions would be x plus 3 to the power of 2 and x minus 2. And in order to simplify, you expand the brackets and you collect like terms. 3 times x is 3x. And then 3 times positive 3 is plus 9. And 5 times x is positive 5x. And positive 5 times negative 2 is negative 10. Now, to combine like terms, all we got to do, 3x plus 5x is 8x. And 9 minus 10 is negative 1 over x plus 3 to the power of 2, making sure that you can see it, and x times x minus 2. That is in simplest form, and you cannot do anything further. You cannot simplify because there's nothing we can do from the top to bottom to simplify. We don't have anything identical, and there's nothing to factor on top in order to simplify from the bottom. So that is in simplest form of this rational given expressions. So I'm just going to leave it with these two examples. Please practice this a few examples again and again and again in order to understand the concept. Do not memorize the question, just making sure to understand and going through the steps and following those steps. And then you can apply to any examples from your textbook. Sounds good? So please do not forget to subscribe. And if you have any questions or concern, you can leave it in below the comment box. I should be able to answer it. And till then, wish you all the very best. And good luck to you.